The airport terminal was empty. Too empty for a Tuesday morning. Then the PA system screeched, once, twice, and died. Information screens went dark. The automated doors froze. For a few seconds, the terminal held its breath. Backup systems coming online, someone announced. Red lights blinked on. Relief flooded the checkpoint area. Then the radio crackled through the interference. Multiple casualties. Train derailment. 12 critical, 3 miles north. Sirens wailed closer. They rushed the victims through the emergency entrance, dirt and rain clinging to their clothes. Dr. Ava Sinclair, 32, with sharp features and silver-grey hair pulled back severely, moved into position beside the chief attending. Her slim frame bent forward with concentration, eyes like steel. And that's when the facility lost all imaging capability. No CT scans, no X-rays, no ultrasound machines, just chaos. And one woman steady breathing in the darkness. "Phones up," she ordered quietly. "We're not losing anyone today." Her hands moved by instinct. Touch, assessment, memory, the precision of someone who'd seen catastrophe before. When the imaging systems finally roared back to life, 11 patients survived. The chief attending just stared. How? How did you do that?" Dr. Sinclair pulled off her latex gloves, voice low and measured. "First time you've watched it happen, Doctor, not mine. Before we start, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe because tonight's story is about a woman who saved 11 lives without technology, without backup, and without anyone knowing the truth about her past. The hospital at dusk had its own rhythm. Soft chimes, the shuffle of feet, the low vibration of the HVAC system far above. To some, it was oppressive. To Dr. Ava Sinclair, it was sanctuary. She moved through the radiology department, her silver-grey hair tied back in a neat ponytail, her posture always perfect, eyes tracing every pixel on the diagnostic screens. The residents joked that she could detect pathology from across the room before the software flagged it. Maybe that was true. At 4:27 p.m., the overhead fluorescents flickered. Once, twice, then the entire floor went dark. There was a silence, the kind that stretches too long. Someone gasped near the reception desk. Backup generators should activate any second, but they didn't. The sound came next. The wail of emergency alerts, the echo of doors slamming throughout the building. A voice on the hospital intercom crackled, cut by static. Complete power loss. All sections. Generator malfunction. Emergency protocols initiated. Then nothing. The hospital was consumed by black. Dr. Sinclair exhaled slowly through her teeth. "Everyone to the stairwells," she said, voice steady. "Stay calm. We've prepared for this." A younger technician near her whispered nervously. "Not like this. Not for this long." Flashlights emerged one by one, casting narrow beams through the corridors. Ava took authority without commanding loudly. She guided staff to manual monitoring, had them check vitals by palpation, oxygen saturation by clinical observation. Her composure made others steady. That's what real leadership looked like in the dark. She turned toward the main emergency department and heard it. Ambulances, multiple, sirens wailing louder. Within moments, red and blue lights streaked across the hospital windows. A security officer shouted from the information desk. Multi-vehicle collision. Train derailment, actually. 12 incoming, some critical. Someone swore under their breath. The hospital's last battery-powered emergency light started flickering and then extinguished completely. "Get every portable light we have," Dr. Sinclair ordered. "Clear bays 1, 2, and 3. Bring triage kits, oxygen reserves, and manual blood pressure cuffs." The first ambulance screeched to a halt outside. The sliding doors wouldn't open. No power. Ava and another staff member forced them apart manually, the rubber seal hissing as it tore. Cold, winter air rushed in alongside pandemonium. The first stretcher rolled through, pushed by paramedics covered in sweat and dust. Multiple crush injuries. Possible internal bleeding, one paramedic yelled. We think the train hit the station platform during rush hour. Dr. Sinclair paused for just half a second. Crush injuries. That term. It meant something specific to her. Not an ordinary accident, not random. But she pushed the thought down and grabbed the gurney. Blood soaked through the white sheet. The patient's pulse was barely palpable, his breathing shallow and rapid. She cut open the bandage. "Where's your portable ultrasound?" she called. "Dead," a nurse answered. "Then we assess by hand," she said. They worked in fits and starts, literally. A nurse held a flashlight between her teeth. Another positioned one against a metal four-stand. Every movement Dr. Sinclair made was calculated, precise, controlled. Her thin, capable hands moved with surgical grace. The emergency physician stormed in, his voice cutting through noise. Who authorized advanced procedures without imaging? Dr. Sinclair didn't look up. "Would you prefer to let him bleed while we wait for power?" "I'm the attending here, Dr. Sinclair," he barked. "You provide initial assessment. I perform the intervention. That's the protocol." She met the doctor's eyes, calm and unwavering, and handed him a pressure dressing already positioned. "He's stabilized. You can proceed." The attending hesitated. He hadn't even detected the internal bleeding. Ava had already found and controlled it. Another alarm sounded distantly. Not electronic, but human. Second ambulance just arrived. Dr. Sinclair spun toward the entrance as another stretcher came rushing in. This one carried 2 patients, a construction worker and a young woman, both wrapped in emergency blankets, both barely conscious. The smell of dust and metal filled the air. "Get them separated," she said. "Construction worker first. Compromised airway." The female nurse beside her swallowed hard. "Without ultrasound, we can't visualize the airway. We can listen," Ava interrupted, placing her ear to the worker's mouth. "Breathing is severely compromised. I need a manual airway device." She established an airway by touch alone, guiding the endotube with pure palpation, no visualization, only the sensation of breath returning. The other staff members stared. It was the kind of skill that didn't come from standard training, but from something darker, more primal. "Who taught you to do that?" one whispered. Dr. Sinclair didn't respond. Minutes melted together like hours. The air was thick with adrenaline and iodine. Without proper refrigeration, some of the blood products had begun to separate. Ava improvised, rotating transfusion protocols, adjusting infusion rates from memory alone. Then a new sound pierced the hallway. Heavy boots, running, multiple personnel. A voice shouted. Another stretcher arrived. This one carried a construction supervisor, hard hat still partially on, blood seeping through industrial-grade bandages, a worker ID swinging faintly under the flashlight. But it wasn't the injuries that made Dr. Sinclair's heart stop. It was the face. She knew him. The paramedic was shouting information. Crush injury, chest and abdomen, vital signs critically unstable. But Ava's ears were ringing. She moved closer on instinct, hand finding the carotid pulse. Weak, but present. Then the patient's eyes opened. Clouded at first, unfocused until they found Ava's. For a moment, time froze. The patient's hand shot out, gripping Dr. Sinclair's wrist with surprising strength. "Sarah," he gasped, voice broken but certain. "You survived!" The flashlight trembled in the nurse's grip. Ava froze completely. Her old name, the name she'd abandoned years ago, echoing through the chaos. She hadn't heard anyone call her that in over a decade. Physicians around her went completely still. The emergency attending turned sharply. "Who is she?" Dr. Sinclair didn't answer, because this supervisor wasn't just another patient. He was from the same operation where Ava was officially classified as deceased. The attending frowned. "Dr. Sinclair, we need vital signs immediately." But the supervisor wouldn't release his grip. His hand shook with agony, but his eyes remained locked on Ava's face, taking in her silver-grey hair, her fine features etched with tension. You pulled us all from that collapse, he whispered, barely audible. Don't stop now. Dr. Sinclair swallowed hard, her composure finally wavering. Let me work, she said quietly. She reached for a flashlight, her gloves slick with blood. Her voice turned commanding again, command returning like reflexive muscle memory. Prep for emergency surgery. Crush injury to the abdomen. Possible abdominal aortic involvement. I need pressure management, not suction. Pressure management? The attending repeated, confused. Without advanced imaging, I said. The operating base spun back into action under her direction. The blackout deepened. The air became heavier. Even the manual ventilation systems were beginning to fail. Alarms flickered, monitors shutting down one by one. The nurse holding the light said softly, Doctor, all the backup batteries are depleted. A heavy silence filled the trauma bay. No electronic hum, no power, no monitor beeping, only respiration, shallow and desperate, purely human. Dr. Sinclair looked down at the supervisor. His pulse weakened again, and Ava said the words that changed everything that night. Then we proceed without them. The attending looked confused. Without what? Procedure without technology, Dr. Sinclair said quietly. Everything. The flashlight dimmed and the surrounding screens went dark. The emergency department had become a war zone. No hum of power, no orchestration of machines, just breath, movement, and the sound of human hands fighting to preserve existence. The generators were completely dead. And in the profound darkness, Doctor, Ava Sinclair was already moving. Get every light source we have, she ordered. Her voice didn't shout. It cut through panic like a surgical instrument. A young technician scrambled to obey. Another lost her footing, nearly tripping over medical cables, snaking across the floor. The ceiling lights were gone. The climate control stopped. The sterile surgical area was suddenly humid, thick with the scent of disinfectant and blood. Dr. Harrison, the chief attending, wiped sweat from his face. This is impossible. We can't perform complex procedures without power. We'll lose them all. Ava glanced toward the gurney where the supervisor lay, his face almost corpse-like under the flickering flashlight. We'll lose him for sure if we delay. Harrison turned to her sharply. You're not a surgeon, Sinclair. I'm not turning over a trauma bay to a radiologist. Her tone remained steady. You're not losing just one. You're losing 12. Harrison opened his mouth to argue, but then one of the patients began convulsing. The trauma bay erupted into chaos again, crisis escalating like a tide. Bag him manually, Dr. Sinclair commanded. Keep pressure consistent. A male nurse, mid-30s, grabbed the manual resuscitator and started pumping rhythmically. His hands wavered until Ava placed her own over them for a moment, guiding, steadying. Not too quickly. Synchronize with natural breathing. Feel the rhythm. Something about her presence quieted the tremor. Harrison exhaled, realizing Dr. Sinclair wasn't panicking. She was actually leading. Ava didn't know it, but the same steadiness had directed wounded soldiers through machine gun fire years ago. Outside, wind howled, a storm intensifying, as if the atmosphere itself was bearing witness. The hospital now existed on pure determination and will. Dr. Sinclair's thin fingers moved with pure instinct, assessing pulse, evaluating wounds by touch, not observation. She knew the landscape of injury like a terrain memorized in memory. The supervisor's pulse became irregular beneath her fingers. He's decompensating, a nurse said urgently. Dr. Sinclair's consciousness went ice cold. We need direct manual intervention. Hand me surgical clamps. Harrison hesitated. We can't potentially, she didn't let him complete. If we don't, his aorta ruptures within 60 seconds. Their eyes met, his filled with hesitation, hers with something far colder. Experience. She'd been in this situation before, only the previous time. It wasn't a hospital. It was underground, amid collapsing infrastructure, lit by emergency flares and burning fuel. Her hands remained steady then. They remained steady now. The male nurse angled the flashlight, illuminating the wound, just barely for her to see the blood pooling deep inside the cavity. "More pressure," she said. Harrison obeyed this time. "You're something else," he muttered, voice unsteady. "No," she said softly, compressing firmly. "Just experienced." The words were barely spoken when the ventilation shaft groaned. A cloud of dust descended from above. Down the hallway, a circuit breaker sparked with a sharp pop, the acrid smell of burnt electrical components filling the space. Sinclair Harrison said urgently, "She's seizing." Dr. Sinclair was already there, one hand maintaining pressure, the opposite stabilizing her neck. "Hold her still. Maintain oxygen supply." The flashlight flickered, the only illumination. And in that momentary flash, Harrison saw her expression, unruffled, concentrated, relentless. It wasn't the expression of a radiologist. It was a commander's expression. When the seizure subsided, the supervisor's breathing regulated slightly. Ava leaned down, speaking words only he could hear. "Stay with me. You've survived worse than this." His lips moved. "You were supposed to be dead." She paused barely a second, then forced a gentle breath. "Not today." The patient nearly smiled before consciousness slipped away again. Harrison looked up, bewildered. "She knows you." Dr. Sinclair didn't explain. Clamps secured. Next patient. Hours felt like minutes. The storm outside hammered the windows, rain streaking across glass like tears. The emergency staff worked entirely manually. No machines, no electronic guidance, only sensation, timing, and instinct. Each patient communicated a narrative through their wounds. The station employee with shattered ribs, the rail worker with debris lodged in his chest, the young woman with injuries dangerously close to her spinal column. Dr. Sinclair progressed from one to the next, comprehending them like a book she'd already read. Every instruction was concise, efficient. Pressure here, 2 centimeters above this landmark. "Continue applying it no matter what," Harrison whispered once quietly. "How are you managing this?" Ava didn't hear, or perhaps she chose not to. The environment had transformed. Panic had shifted to focus. A synchronized rhythm developed centered around her voice. For the first time in 25 minutes, nobody screamed. Nobody panicked. They performed, but the moment didn't sustain. The supervisor's vitals dropped significantly. No monitor, just the quiet between heartbeats that told her everything. Dr. Sinclair placed her fingers to the carotid artery, pulse weak, slowing. She turned to Harrison. "She's losing blood internally again." Harrison hesitated. "We don't have imaging capabilities. We can't visualize the bleed." Ava positioned the flashlight. "Point it toward that area. There. Do you see that pattern in the pooled blood?" He blinked. "How did you?" "Decades ago, I learned that blood moves like liquid when circulation fails. It ripples in specific patterns." Harrison froze, observing what his eyes couldn't process. Which vessel? Somewhere without technology, without help? Dr. Sinclair answered simply. Then her hand entered the wound, found and clamped an artery by touch alone, and whispered, "I've got it." The flashlight caught the faint brightness of stabilization in her eyes. The supervisor's breathing steadied again. The patient's hand moved, brushing Ava's arm, unconscious, but seeking. Harrison stepped back, breathing hard. That was impossible. Dr. Sinclair peeled off one glove, her hands trembling now just slightly. "Not impossible," she murmured, "just remembered." For a moment, nobody spoke, only the patter of rainfall and the faint sound of laboured respiration. Then, from deeper in the structure, a noise rumbled, the backup power supply attempting to initialize. The ceiling lights flickered once, then twice. Power returned weakly to a single overhead light above the surgical area. Harrison exhaled shakily. Finally. But when he looked toward Dr. Sinclair, she wasn't smiling. She was still gripping the supervisor's hand, blood-covered, profoundly human. She whispered something barely audible. Harrison caught fragments of it, 11 lives, one possibility. The other nurse blinked. What did she say? Dr. Sinclair stood slowly, looking around at the faintly lit devastation. The survivors, the exhausted staff, the monitors beginning to show signs of life once more. Her expression softened, but her voice remained low. We're still working. 3 more need immediate surgery. Harrison rubbed his face tiredly. After what just happened, I need complete transparency about who you are. She turned toward him, her silver-grey hair catching the dim light, eyes tired yet fierce. Someone who's lived through darker moments than this. The wind outside started diminishing, the storm beginning to fade. For the first time, the emergency department felt quiet, not calm, just suspended between moments. Dr. Sinclair leaned against the wall, finally allowing herself a single deep breath. The supervisor was stable. The others would make it. Harrison came to stand beside her, observing her profile in the flickering illumination. You commanded that entire floor like you'd performed it previously. No hesitation, no anxiety. That's not standard medical training. Ava's eyes stayed on the supervisor's sleeping expression. My training wasn't conventional. He opened his mouth, prepared to question further, but stopped when he noticed the faint burn scar on Ava's neck, like an injury that never properly healed. Whatever her background was, it definitely wasn't civilian. Electricity hummed back through the structure. The monitors restarted their rhythmic beeping, a fragile sound of survival. Harrison whispered, "You saved them." Dr. Sinclair gave a faint, barely perceptible smile. "That's what I do when I have to." Their overhead lights gradually brightened, brilliant, sterile, ordinary once more. The spell was broken. Staff began sanitizing, reorganizing, resetting the emergency department. But something in the environment had fundamentally changed. Respect displaced panic. And standing in the flood of fluorescent light, Dr. Ava Sinclair, 32 years old with her distinctive silver-grey hair and refined features, resembled exactly who she had previously been. Not a radiologist, not a subordinate, but a healer who'd once been a warrior. Her expression softened as she moved back toward the supervisor. The man's fingers twitched again, finding Ava's. "I owe you my life," he mumbled weakly. She squeezed back once, whispering, "Don't thank me yet," because she knew instinctively this evening was far from finished. Not for the supervisor, not for her. Outside, lightning illuminated the sky again, outlining her silhouette against the glass, like a figure caught between two realities. The one she'd escaped, and the one she could never entirely abandon. If you believe real courage doesn't require light to exist, subscribe. Because stories like hers, the obscure, unrecognized ones, require remembrance. The tempest passed, but the quiet it left felt heavier than any storm. Morning light crept through the hospital's emergency department windows, pale and grey, illuminating the aftermath of survival. Empty, 4 containers hung limp, trays containing bloodied materials stacked high. Exhausted expressions lingered from the night of impossible triumph. Dr. Ava Sinclair sat in the corner of the trauma bay, head in her hands, studying her covered fingers. The slight shaking in them revealed the composed exterior she'd maintained. Across the room, Dr. Harrison moved slowly, reviewing charts, but his focus remained on her. "You understand," he finally said. "I've practiced emergency medicine for 23 years. I've observed miracles, catastrophes, events that violated possibility, but what you accomplished last night?" He paused mid-thought. Ava didn't glance up. "We each performed actions that were required." He shook his head firmly. "No, you did what nobody else possibly could." The stillness deepened between them. Harrison leaned forward slightly. "Who trained you to perform interventions in absolute darkness? Without monitoring equipment, without panic?" Dr. Sinclair's response came slowly, like retrieving something from distant time. "You learn when the alternative means watching people die." before she could continue, the emergency doors burst wide open. A young nurse hurried in, breathing heavily. "Doctor," the supervisor, "he's conscious and asking for you." Ava stood instantly, all traces of tiredness vanishing. In patient room 412, the supervisor lay against pillows, skin ashen but consciousness clear, fresh bandages wrapped around his abdomen. The cardiac monitor displayed a steady rhythm. His eyes shifted the moment Dr. Sinclair appeared, and for a moment there was disbelief visible, as if he still wasn't convinced she was actually present. "Mom," he rasped. His voice was unsteady, but maintained military bearing. "Never thought I'd see you again." Dr. Harrison remained near the doorway, arms crossed. "Do you two have a connection?" Ava hesitated, then nodded once. "Underground collapse operation. Lima sector." The supervisor gave a faint, agonized laugh. "That's putting it extremely mildly." He looked at Harrison. "Mom pulled 9 of us from a collapsing tunnel structure under live fire. Saved our medical officer too. We believed she didn't survive extraction." Harrison's expression went blank. "You're telling me she was our combat medic?" The supervisor corrected him, looking back at Dr. Sinclair. "Commander Ava Sinclair, Army Medical Specialist. Everyone was told you were gone." The words hung in the sanitized air like a gunshot. Harrison blinked in amazement. Commander Ava met his gaze calmly. "Not anymore." The supervisor's eyes narrowed. "They announced your transport helicopter went down. We observed the explosion from our position." "Ma'am," his voice became uncertain. "I inscribed your designation on the memorial stone, sir." Her throat contracted. "Then I guess I returned as a memory." The silence following this was deeper than before. Even the cardiac monitor seemed to pause. Harrison ultimately recovered his voice. "Why? Why would you obscure everything? Your military record, the training, all of it?" Dr. Sinclair didn't reply immediately. Her gaze drifted to the supervisor, observing him breathe. "Every moment I shut my eyes, I witness those I failed to rescue." Harrison stepped forward carefully. "Yet you saved 11 yesterday." She shook her head marginally. "That's not the way this operates." He wanted to pursue it further, but the supervisor spoke first, his tone softer now. "The collapse in Lima. It wasn't your responsibility, ma'am. You performed everything possible." Her control fractured momentarily. "I was required to bring all of you out." "You did," he murmured. 9 of us survived extraction because of you." Before Harrison could respond, the hospital PA system buzzed. Code red, emergency transport incoming. Ava's eyes flicked toward the doorway. Harrison turned toward the exit. "You should rest, Ava. You've been awake continuously," but she was already putting on gloves. "I'm prepared." He held her wrist gently. "You don't require validation." She gazed at his grip, then back up. "It's not regarding validation. It's regarding understanding my purpose." And then she departed. Moving through the hallway, progressing rapidly toward the ambulance receiving bay. Outside, precipitation had transformed into mist. The red strobe of the arriving ambulance bathed the wet pavement. Paramedics descended rapidly, unloading 2 stretchers. Motor vehicle collision victims. One was unconscious, the other writhing with discomfort. Major head trauma, unresponsive, cardiac output declining. One medic shouted, "Trauma room 1, Dr. Sinclair commanded. Now, within the emergency surgical area, she operated like a maestro, instructing, modifying, evaluating. Harrison appeared moments later, vision encompassing the developing crisis. She observed Ava resume command, her composure returning like a reflex. Momentarily, it resembled the night before. Yet this moment, electricity existed. Illumination was abundant. And still, she operated as though she didn't depend on either. As the initial patient stabilized, Harrison positioned himself beside her. "You understand?" she murmured. "That after yesterday, you can't revert to anonymity." Her voice remained neutral. "I'm not pursuing fame," she said. He examined her features, brow wrinkled. Then, what do you actually desire? Dr. Sinclair's covered hand stopped mid-movement, a beat of silence preceding her response. Absolution. He didn't inquire from what. He didn't require explanation. When the final patient was transported to critical care, the rush of urgency disappeared. Ava remained motionless momentarily, the hum of apparatus substituting the dark from earlier. The audio should have been welcome. It wasn't. Harrison's voice came from behind, calmer now. The supervisor, he requested you again. Dr. Sinclair pivoted. What exactly did he communicate? He stated you saved his existence twice, and that he possesses information regarding the collapse in Lima. She went rigid. Harrison narrowed his eyes. What information? Ava's expression became darker. The category, you don't investigate if you desire restful sleep. But Harrison didn't retreat. He stated something regarding compromised circumstances. That trigger anything. Her expression solidified, the slightest tremor returning to her hand. If he's accurate, that means what happened to my personnel wasn't coincidental. Harrison moved closer. You're suggesting someone engineered your death? Dr. Sinclair regarded the patient rooms, her expression becoming distant, burdened. We were delivering sensitive information regarding a covert investigation, experimental biological specimens, classified. Harrison's heart accelerated, and, currently, that identical supervisor appears here, injured by particles that appear precisely matching those. She nodded once. Identical markers, identical configuration. The corridor light surged, brilliant, subsequently extinguished. A blackout, momentary yet complete. When restoration happened, Ava flinched. Harrison noticed. You're still connected to that conflict, he said quietly. She regarded him, expression icy and unwavering. That conflict isn't finished with me. Footsteps sounded from behind. A uniformed officer appeared. A sealed envelope contained. Commander Sinclair? He inquired hesitantly. Ava straightened. That designation is no longer mine. The officer paused, then presented the envelope. Transmission from the Pentagon, marked critical. She accepted it, fingers shaking marginally, attention fixed on the official seal. Harrison examined her shoulder. What's happening? Dr. Sinclair didn't unfold it yet. It's a reinstatement directive, she whispered. I can sense it. Harrison looked confused. You've separated from service. They can't, she interrupted. If the identical agenda that nearly terminated my personnel has reactivated, they absolutely can and will. The supervisor's voice drifted weakly from his room. Doc, prevent them from concealing it again. Ava rotated toward the sound, knuckles whitening around the envelope. Not this iteration. Harrison's voice was a solemn warning. If you access that, there's no reversing course. She examined the seal, recollections flashing. Desert heat, weapons fire, the deafening roar of rotor systems. 9 bodies transported through dust. Her expression hardened. I already went back the instant the lights shut off. She tore open the envelope. Within was a single document marked Operation Silent Protocol, Reactivation Directive. Commander Ava Sinclair, MD, the designation her previous unit had operated under. The fluorescent illumination flickered once more, growing darker momentarily, sufficient for both to feel the temperature drop. Harrison's throat contracted. What's your decision? Dr. Sinclair folded the paper, voice scarcely perceptible. Complete what they initiated. The hallway down the path, the supervisor stirred, calling her name. She pivoted, breathing gradually, preparing for something still arriving. Outside, thunder rumbled distantly, low, practically a message, because she comprehended the blackout wasn't coincidental. And the struggle she'd abandoned had merely discovered her institution. The document remained open on the table, edges fluttering from the ventilation. The official Department of Defense emblem appeared to watch, cold, binding, unavoidable. Dr. Ava Sinclair hadn't rested. The blackout had finished, strength restored, but every hum of the hospital infrastructure felt deceptive. Beyond the window, the afternoon traffic moved continuously. Inside, absolute silence. Dr. Harrison leaned against the entrance, beverage in hand. "You haven't returned home," he said softly. She didn't look away from the wall. "Home is a location you exit eventually." He positioned the cup next to her. "They cannot mandate your return. You recognize you're not possession of the armed forces anymore." Her voice remained detached, emotionless. "They weren't required to mandate. They understood I'd review it." He observed her silently for an extended period. "Operation Silent Protocol. That's the designation your personnel perished performing, isn't it?" Ava's hand clenched around the correspondence. "We were contracted to transport restricted biological information, but our transportation was assaulted. They declared it was opposing forces." Harrison frowned. "And presently, she met his pupils." "Presently, it's happening repeatedly, and someone wants to conclude what they started." Before Harrison could continue, a soft knock came at the entrance. The supervisor appeared there, pale, bandaged, yet upright, his identification badge hanging delicately from his medical gown. "You shouldn't be leaving your mattress," Dr. Sinclair said forcefully. He grinned weakly, wasn't planning to skip expressing gratitude. Again, Harrison withdrew. The supervisor proceeded forward, his voice quieter currently. "Doc, they'll pursue that information. You're aware, isn't that right?" "Yes," she said. "They already have." He gestured affirmatively. "The operatives who targeted our personnel, they weren't insurgent fighters. They were hired specialists, private operatives, professional equipment, American-manufactured ammunition." Ava's chest sank. That clarifies why official recordings vanished. "Sir," he continued, gripping the furniture for stability, "whatever was inside that delivery, it definitely wasn't pharmaceutical supplies." The fluorescent light above flickered just once, but the occurrence transmitted a chill through her being. "You suspect they're monitoring?" she inquired. She didn't reply. She was already destroying the correspondence. Let them observe. Later that evening, the hospital felt quieter than standard. The passageways shone with dim lighting, a facilities problem, or perhaps additional. Dr. Sinclair proceeded through the corridor toward Emergency Surgical Area 1, where the turmoil commenced. The recollection of that period replayed in every movement. Hemorrhage, destruction, the illumination of handheld lights, her personal directives breaking through panic. She halted at the entrance. Within, the space was perfectly arranged once more. No evidence of the turmoil. Still, something regarding the environment felt haunted, as though the spirits of the departed persisted here. Dr. Harrison's appearance manifested behind her within the glass. "They're delivering a representative from the Pentagon," he communicated. "Technically, regarding your patient documentation, unspoken implications." "I'm aware." She examined his outline, peaceful, grounded, yet burdened. "You're able to leave, relocate to another facility, begin again." Dr. Sinclair declined her head. "You're unable to depart from phantoms. You can simply confront them till they stop pursuing you." The PA system discharged weakly, distorted static flowing throughout. Momentarily, a voice transmitted via a woman's direct formal. "Commander Sinclair, verify presence." Ava went immobile. Harrison's pupils expanded. What exactly was that? "They discovered me." Before she responded, footsteps reverberated via the hall. Footsteps organized in formation. Harrison's respiration accelerated. "Organization?" Dr. Sinclair's expression became a whisper. "No, not this establishment." She rotated, scanning for alternative passages. The rear supply entrance, shadowed partially, continuing open for maintenance. She directed Harrison toward it. "Relocate the clinical personnel. Eastern corridor." "Now, what do you intend?" "I'll delay them." He abandoned without resistance. The footsteps drew closer, the sound of communication systems pursuing. Ava stepped into illumination. "You're performing an illegal operation in a licensed healthcare institution." The leader rotated his skull. And you're remarkably proficient at continuing, Commander. She didn't waver. The dispute concluded. You failed. He displayed a small smile. Disputes don't finish, physician. They simply migrate. For a moment, every individual remained frozen. Then the passageway brightness increased. Luminous, subsequently dark, total interruption. When restoration returned, the personnel had vanished. Simply the faint fragrance of burnt electronics persisted. Plus, on the floor, something else remained. Her destroyed correspondence, reconstructed with professional precision, she inhaled slowly, maintaining the boundaries. The designation visible currently beneath the fractured sections: Thompson, Rebecca, Federal Security Division. The identical representative who had transferred her personnel to Lima, the one who'd entombed her. Hours subsequent, Dr. Sinclair stayed by the supervisor's bed. He slumbered, respiratory effort reduced however consistent. Externally, daybreak advanced beyond the city landscape. Harrison proceeded gently, containing refreshment. You didn't go back to your residence. She declined her attention. Can't rest whenever phantoms communicate. He paused, subsequently transferred a file. They'll request comprehensive briefing. However, I think you should express your perspective initially. She obtained it, examining. Through pictures of the electrical blackout operation, the collision circumstances, the exposed injuries, the illuminated expressions. Standard citizens transformed remarkable because they declined to disintegrate. Harrison examined her reaction. You're rejecting reactivation, aren't you? Dr. Sinclair sealed the archive gently. No, I'm remaining precisely here, despite actions against you. Her expression warmed. They terminated my authority. They cannot eliminate my assignment. She increased, progressing toward the space where primary rays contacted the medical facility designation, St. Mercy Healthcare. Down below, clinical personnel initiated rotations, unaware of the preceding evening's shadows. Ava whispered virtually silently, her silver-grey hair catching the light of dawn. Combat doesn't consistently manifest via battlegrounds. Occasionally it's within areas resembling these, fighting for existing cardiovascular systems. Harrison regarded her with hushed wonderment. Do you think they'll surface repeatedly? Dr. Sinclair grinned softly. Certainly. However, the following instance, the electricity will persist. He discharged a shaky laugh. You're something else. Ava rotated, peaceful and determined. Not something else. Simply alive. The hum of machines filled the air again, but this time it wasn't noise. It was life echoing through steel and light. She picked up her stethoscope, adjusted her gloves, and stepped back into the ward, her voice echoing down the hall. Steady, certain, unstoppable. Let's get to work.